how does that change the guitar? It changes the vibration, changes the expression of that instrument. Our bodies are no different. This study looked at adjusting the upper neck and how that affects sensory integration. Okay? They found that dysfunction of the spinal joints, improper motion or movement of the spinal joint, actually alters that input going into the central nervous system. It alters that and causes disamplification. Now the great news about that is that once they corrected that imbalance, it restored the proper communication to the brain. This doctor found that movement of the spine actually stimulates the cerebellum. This is the part of the body that is in charge of full body movement, thoughts, feelings, emotions, and healthy functioning of the organs and immune system. The spine is the main driver of this part of the brain, which is where sensory information is integrated. We talked about fight or flight and how it's so important not to be living in fight or flight. In this study, they found that adjusting the neck, doing neck adjustments, took the body out of fight or flight and into a resting, healing, digesting phase of the nervous system. And this can be measured. Okay? This what these three tests or studies are talking about is HRV, heart rate variability. We do this test in our office. It's a gold standard for measuring that autonomic or automatic balance. All three tests, and what all the research is showing, is that adjusting the spine, removing interference to the nervous system by adjusting the subluxation, produces a healthy autonomic nervous system balance. Okay? This is huge information. This takes people out of that chronic fight or flight state. With kids, we typically use an earpiece for the HRV. Sometimes even that is too much for kids that have major sensory issues. This is the other test we do to measure the autonomic nervous system. This is a paraspinal thermography scan. Okay? We're looking at the skin temperature on both sides of the spine. So why do you think we're concerned with that?
Inflammation.
It's a good answer. Yeah. What else? What controls the skin temperature? What do you think? Your nervous system. Your nervous system, autonomic nervous system, controls the skin temperature. Inflammation can affect it too, but primarily the autonomic nervous system. So this particular scan, what we're looking for is white and green kind of going back and forth. This is a one-sided, very imbalanced scan showing major interference in the upper neck and also down in this region, which happens to be all digestive. When I check children on this neurodevelopmental spectrum, they typically are always subluxated here, and they also have major involvement with their digestive region, which should make sense based upon what we've talked about already. This is my son that same day. What I didn't tell you is that he wouldn't even let me check or adjust his spine for about that same 6-month period. He refused. He had major oppositional defiance issues. However, he wanted to draw on my face, and I said, "Oh, hey, can I draw on your back?" So I used it as an opportunity to check his spine. Take a look at what you see here.
Shoulder blade is lower. And his hips. His hips are twisted.
His hips are twisted. His shoulder blade is winged. Look at his ear. The position of how far off his ears are. What you're looking at, remember I talked about the nervous system, that we're just walking around as nervous systems, and the rest is that meat suit that we're wearing? What you're looking at is the physical representation of the tension in his spinal cord. Okay? This can be checked and addressed, and you can even check in your own children, even in yourselves. We often, you know what happens when our neck is subluxated? We don't walk around like this. Our body does this. It tries to right that imbalance because this is the last place that your body wants to have a problem with the spine. It will sacrifice these other areas, and that's what it's doing through here. Over time, what do you think that would lead to? Just
Body issues.
all kinds of body issues, like all sorts, not only physical pains and joint problems, but also with problems with those organ systems where those nerves travel to in those different parts of the spine. Yeah, this is all, like this spot here is all digestive, heart, lungs, stomach. So here's a really cool direction chiropractic research is going in. We've known for years, 120 years, that chiropractic is making a massive impact on the body and brain. Now we can actually see it. This is a functional MRI. They did this study looking at individuals doing a certain movement before and after an adjustment of the neck. What they found is that the brain was using much less energy, less glucose, to perform the same action. The brain was more efficient in performing the same activity after the adjustment. It was working more efficiently. This study just came out last year. Without a doubt, adjusting the subluxated spine changes brain function. So there's changes up to 20% change in brain function. In the prefrontal cortex is where we make decisions. It's where we a lot of behaviors come from. It's in the prefrontal cortex right here, and that's where they saw major changes. And the studies coming out here now, looking at blood flow and cerebral spinal fluid flow, they're finding that when the spine is subluxated in the neck, that will alter and decrease the cerebral spinal fluid flow and the blood flow. Do you think that might be a problem if your brain is not, and the spinal cord is not getting the proper nutrition, or is toxic because it's not draining? And by correcting it, they're doing before and after imaging, they're finding that it restores the optimal flow and supply. I believe that's what was happening with Liam. Liam went from having up to 60 seizures a day. He was having drop seizures where he just give out and fall at any moment of the day. Up to 60 a day. Within a month, he was seizure-free. When he was told that his EEGs and MRIs would never be normal, he's now 3 years seizure-free, purely because we began to adjust his spine. Okay. Now, if we could do that for Liam, imagine what it can do for the rest of society. So what do you think causes these subluxations? Injury? Stress? Posture, stress, yeah. So it's stress. It's broken down into 3 categories. Physical stress is what I heard so far. Injury, posture. Is our posture better today nowadays versus, now we're all doing this? Our kids, too. Kids today move something like 40% less than they did even in my generation. They're not getting outdoors. They're indoors and not doing the things we used to do. But it's not only physical stress, it's chemical stress. We just talked about how toxic this world is that we live in. That nervous system is there just to process information, whether it's physical stress, chemical stress, whatever. It's like a bucket. You can only handle so much. When your bucket overflows, it's like a circuit breaker. It just gives. It can no longer process and handle that information. Mental, emotional stress. So how common do you think subluxation is then? It's very common because it's a natural process. Our bodies are designed to break down. What chiropractic discovered is that these subluxations, one, exist, and two, there's a method to correct it. It's like the reset button. You know that easy button for staples? It's like the reset button for our bodies to restore us to our optimal state. Now, most people have had subluxations for years, so it's a chronic process that's going on in their body. It's kind of like a dimmer switch, though. Some people have it to some degree, where it's just, maybe it's just decreasing their life and health potential just a little bit. If it's massive, then it's massively impacting their life and health and function. We have a couple studies that looked at this, how common it is. We're especially concerned at birth. 1,000 infants, 80% were found to have misalignments in the upper neck in the first month of life. Okay, 80%. This study looked at 1,250 infants, 90% had some sort of birth trauma, with 10% being more severe. That would be more like this torticollis, plagiocephaly, things like that. Birth trauma is extremely, extremely common. Okay, I share this at every talk I give because I want people to understand this. This medical doctor, way back in 1969, said the birth process, even under the best conditions, is potentially a crippling event for the fetus. Spinal cord and brainstem injuries occur often during the process of birth, but frequently escape diagnosis. So if it's so common, why is it escaping diagnosis? I practice. What else?
Babies can't communicate, or it's so hard to know what's going on. Day by day, they become more responsive to.
They can't say, "Oh man, I think I'm really subluxated my neck." Right? So, but the other thing is, who's checking? Nobody's checking. If a child has colic, failure to thrive, inability to breastfeed, they can't turn their neck, all these different things, we just start to treat it with chemicals. Give them some different things to treat those symptoms versus checking to see if they've had a spinal cord and neck injury. So this German medical doctor is talking about the same thing. He calls it KISS syndrome. He thinks he discovered what we've been talking about for 120 years. He calls it KISS syndrome. He says these delicate neck structures undergo considerable stress during delivery. Any obstacle impeding these signals going up to the brain would have extensive consequences in the developing nervous system. Again, if that nervous system can't get the information, it's going to cause major problems. Long labor, C-section delivery, vacuum extraction, twins or triplets, and the position of the baby inside the mother are all risk factors for that. So this is how I always have this slide at the end of my presentation. So I start by saying that I don't diagnose in my office. I didn't tell you, I normally say this, I don't treat autism or ADHD or seizures. That's not my objective, to treat a condition, okay? So now, those things often improve. Now, I want you to understand something. People under chiropractic care, under what we call asymptomatic care, I mean, they didn't have any problem. No label, no symptom. These are things that when doing a literature review, they found in this paper, it improved autonomic nervous system function, better endocrine system function, better immune system, muscle strength, athletic ability, respiration, recovery time, reproductive hormones, visual acuity. If we're not treating conditions, why are all these things improving for people?
Totally.
We're restoring normal function. Our nervous systems are designed to heal us. Okay? And that's what chiropractic does. Here's a quick before and after scan. This was Hector. Hector came to us in extreme distress. He bit his mother on the first visit, nonverbal. He was tantruming and just in extreme distress about 90% of the day. He was hitting his head against the wall. The school didn't know how to handle him. Within 1 week, that went down from 90% according to the parents and the teachers to 10%. Okay. Because he likely, and I've felt a lot of necks over the years, we're going to talk about some being a little, some being a lot. He had so much pressure on his brainstem that he likely has had severe migraines and all these problems. But he couldn't express himself. He went from that to then hugs and kisses, giving his parents, communicating with them, playing, interacting with toys, and all these things he just never was doing. But you can see in his scans, he went from major distress within 2 months to a scan looking way more clear, only one red bar there. This is something we do in the office in ATEC form. It's looking at outcome measures. We typically see a 30-point drop in scores when we're taking care of kids in the office. And the session is very, very gentle and dynamic. I added this slide because parents are wondering, how's my child going to lay on the table? Many times they don't. Many times we adjust children in front of the fish tank or the toys, on the ground, crawling, standing, seated. It doesn't matter because I've learned to adapt my methods to meet the needs of the child versus the child meeting my needs. So it's a very dynamic process, very gentle and safe.